Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter.
Hi there guys, it's Adam Martyn here, and welcome back to a rather special video. It's time for an unboxing, a very special unboxing. Anyone who has watched this channel for a length of time will know that I am a big film fan, and one of my all-time favourite directors is Alfred Hitchcock. The master of suspense himself has crafted a whole litany of films that have gone on to stand the test of time and serve as some groundbreaking pieces of cinema. Stuff like Psycho, North by Northwest, The Birds, Rear Window, the list could honestly go on and on and on. But a part of Hitchcock's catalogue that often gets ignored is the very beginning. Alfred Hitchcock started way back. We're talking back in the silent days of film in the 1920s. And Studio Canal have now for the first time put a whole bunch of these early films, both silent and talkies, onto Blu-ray for the very first time, and the result is this. This is Hitchcock The Beginning, a brand new 11-disc box set containing 10 of Hitchcock's earliest works, namely his output when he was working for British International Pictures, or BIP for short. Now, full disclaimer, this is a review copy that Studio Canal sent to me. I'm very thankful and grateful that they did because I'm a massive Hitchcock fan, and the chance to get my hands on this, to watch everything and talk about it with you guys was too good to pass up. So a big thank you to Studio Canal for once again was supplying me with another great set. So, I think without wasting any more time, let's look into this set and see exactly what's inside, what's on offer, and perhaps most importantly for you guys, is it worth your money? So looking at the front cover, I actually really like this sort of black and red and white style they're going for. It says Hitchcock The Beginning, from silent to sound, 10 early works. And you can see some pictures from those films here, like there's a picture from Blackmail, from number 17. I know some people have already voiced their thoughts online, saying they don't really like this, what would you call it, like retro style, or this design of artwork. But I think this is really slick. There's an air of a certain amount of like class to it, sophistication, that even though these films are really old, they're certainly in amongst like a prestige, like they're very worthy of this sort of thing, if that makes sense. But that's your front cover, and you can see on the spine this is a chunky box set. For those of you who like big old box sets that house a lot of movies, you're going to be happy with this. This is a very nice sturdy case as well. This doesn't feel fragile, this feels very durable, and ultimately it's going to look really, really nice sitting on your shelf. Flipping on over to the back, we can see more images there, including in the top right an image of a much younger Hitchcock than the one that is commonly portrayed. It says, for the first time on Blu-ray, featuring new restorations and scores, experience 10 of Alfred Hitchcock's early works. From the silent film era to the first talkies, the 11-disc set also contains a newly commissioned, full-length documentary, Becoming Hitchcock, exploring the director's first sound picture, Blackmail. In 1929, Hitchcock directed Blackmail, the first British sound feature, hailed as a film which used sound and dialogue with more flair and imagination than any Hollywood or European film of the time. Hitchcock's inventive and expressionist use of sound demonstrated the new technology opened a realm of possibilities. And with that film, Blackmail, that's going to be mentioned a whole lot of times because, oh boy, does this box set like to talk about and promote Blackmail, but arguably with very good reason, but we'll get to that a little bit later. As you can see on the back, in terms of the films, the silents we have are The Ring, The Farmer's Wife, Champagne, The Manxman, and the silent version of Blackmail. And I say that because with the talkies, you have the sound version of Blackmail, you have Juno and the Pekarek, Murder, The Skin Game, Rich and Strange, and number 17. So all these films came out between 1927 and 1932, really showing the pace of how films were made back then. But as it mentioned, you have a new documentary, Becoming Hitchcock, The Legacy of Blackmail. We'll talk a bit more about that later on as well. On the bottom of the box set here, you can see that all the films are listed with their run times and all the other technical detail that you might want. The run times vary. I don't think there's a film on here that runs over 2 hours, and the shortest one clocks in at just over 1 hour. So there's a whole range of run times there. So looking at the box set, you can see it's made of these two sort of books, if you like. Here is the first one at the front, which has the logo on the front. And again, I really like this sort of art style. I know it might not be to everyone's taste, but it really works for me. You can see that this book houses The Ring, The Farmer's Wife, Champagne, The Manxman, Blackmail, both versions, and Juno and the Peacock. So opening it up, you can see a lovely image from Blackmail there, a very iconic image. If you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. And we have the discs. So as mentioned, there's a disc for The Ring, one for The Farmer's Wife, one for Champagne, one for The Manxman, one for both versions of Blackmail, and Juno and the Peacock as well. On the back as well, you get a little bit of detail about the film itself, a little synopsis, if you like, there. Here is the second book, again with slightly different artwork to the first in that same style. This one has Murder, The Skin Game, Rich and Strange, number 17, and the Becoming Hitchcock documentary on it as well. Here's another image from number 17, very fun image from that film. So yep, you have discs for Murder, one for The Skin Game, one for Rich and Strange, and one for number 17. And right at the back is the disc for Becoming Hitchcock, that brand new documentary we spoke about. And on the back again, there's little synopses for each film and for the documentary too. What's also nice is we get a poster included with this, which is of the front cover of the main cover of this. And again, I really like this artwork, so I can totally see myself framing and putting this poster up somewhere because I'm a massive Hitchcock fan, big fan of his work, including this work, as we're going to get into a bit later. But this is definitely a nice poster to have in your collection if you're a poster sort of person. And what might be of great interest to people who really want to learn more about these films is this, the special edition booklet. This is a very comprehensive book. It's nice and beefy. It's more than 60 pages long, basically talking about this era of Hitchcock. And, you know, like the first thing there is about him and his relationship with BIP from 27 to 32. So lots of fascinating history about Hitchcock, a lot of stuff I wasn't aware of as well. So if you're into that sort of thing, the behind the scenes, the art of filmmaking, especially in this early, you know, from silent into sound era of film, then you're definitely going to like this. There's featurettes about like the emergence of Hitchcock, for example, like more of his stylings, like the first MacGuffin, for example, that's in number 17. Hitchcock would use MacGuffins throughout his career. You also have some really nice vintage like booklets or pamphlets for certain films, like here's one for The Ring. That's really cool to see these vintage things in action that would have been handed out. Same with The Manxman as well, that features here too. You've got one for Rich and Strange. Champagne's got one here. And then there's a really interesting feature about the restoration, because a lot of these older films, particularly from the 20s and 30s, to get a modern release now have to undergo some really extensive restoration or remastering to even get back on the screen in some way. So this booklet will detail how those silent films were, particularly the silent ones, were restored. This was a big effort back in 2012 by the British Film Institute, the BFI. It was called Save the Hitchcock 9, and it was the silents you see on here, the 5 of them, and 4 other silents that aren't present on this set, those being The Pleasure Garden, The Lodger, Downhill, and Easy Virtue. But that gives you a really good insight into that restoration process, how that was exactly done for these films. And then you've got restoration credits, which I found really useful to delve into because this tells you exactly which restoration this is, whether it's a BFI one or something more modern, because some of these are new, which again we'll get into a bit later. It tells you the institutes behind them as well, run times, basically all the details you could ever want about these films are explained here. You've also got score credits as well for the silent films, which I think is a really great touch, because a lot of these are new scores that were composed by various people, as you can see here. And then the last main bit of the book is about the documentary in question, which is well worth a read as well as a watch, but we'll get into that a little later. So yes, very well-produced booklet, very well-produced box set on the whole, as you can see there. I really love the packaging, the sturdiness of it, the presentation, the sort of mix of white, red, and black as the colour palette. It might not be to everyone's taste, but for me, for an early Hitchcock set compared to what we've had in the past, this is a really cool look. Really happy with the packaging, the sturdiness, just really happy with the whole look and feel of this box set. But with any set, it's not just about how it looks, it's about the content on it. So we'll go through film by film, we'll talk a little bit about it, my personal thoughts on it, what's included on each disc, including special features, touching on the restorations and remasterings as well. And then don't worry, we'll get to it right at the end as to whether it's worth your hard-earned cash. Regarding restorations and remasterings and such like, we'll touch on those a bit later. For now, let's go through the films in this set, where I'll give you my thoughts on each of them, as well as detailing the special features on each disc. The Ring, released in 1927, has a unique distinction in that it wasn't just directed by Hitchcock, but it was also written by him. Inspired by his many visits to boxing matches, Hitchcock devised a story about a plucky young boxer, who after a crushing defeat, must climb back up the ladder to seek his rematch. Not only that, but his adversary begins to sway his love, creating a classic love triangle. Some would say it's a very simple story, but that simplicity absolutely carries through in the way that it's told. And for 1927, lots of visual techniques are utilised by Hitchcock, showing how pioneering and adaptive he was even in those early days. For special features, we have an interview piece with Neil Brand, a silent film composer who gave his take on The Ring back in the 80s, but his insights into the genre and the power that the live music element can have for silent film is well worth a watch. We also have a short archive audio interview between Hitchcock and Truffaut, a French interviewer, in which he speaks on and gives his thoughts on The Ring. We also have an introduction to the film from historian and director Noel Simsolo. Another feature that I love on any physical media release is the inclusion of a stills gallery, with high-quality photos taken from the film and also the behind-the-scenes presented for us to see. Solid start overall. Let's move on to Disc 2. Based on the play of the same name, The Father's Wife is a film that you wouldn't instantly attribute to Alfred Hitchcock. It's a lot more light-hearted and comedic than most of his well-known pictures, but it's a style that he proves he can tackle. The story revolves around the titular farmer. After his wife passes on, it was her dying wish that he remarry once again and live happily. The comedy comes in the farmer's attempts to find the perfect woman, as he is constantly rejected. It's a fun little silent, if a little too long, in my opinion, but a really fascinating insight into how Hitchcock would tackle a more comedic-based film, particularly in his earlier years. Special features-wise, we have Neil Brand appearing once more to talk about his score for The Farmer's Wife, another archive audio interview between Hitchcock and Truffaut, in which this film is discussed, plus another introduction carried out by Noel Simsolo. We also have another wonderful stills gallery. A new feature for this disc is another short audio interview, this one with Ronald Neame, a producer and director who recalls being on the set briefly observing Hitchcock at work whilst he was filming The Farmer's Wife. And now on to our third picture of the set. Hitchcock was told to make a film based off a title, Champagne, and that was it. The result, unfortunately, isn't arguably his greatest work. Even in retrospect, he would often speak drolly of this film and was generally very dismissive. The story, thin as it is, centres around a woman who goes after the man she loves, even flying to the middle of the ocean to be with him as they sail to Paris. There's more to it, involving a rich father seemingly losing all his fortune and this mysterious man throughout, but honestly, this one for me at least felt like a bit of a slog. Not that it isn't without merit, there are some really interesting technical moments, Hitchcock yet again aiming to push the boundaries of what was possible with the camera, particularly in the realm of silent film. Special features include another interview with Neil Brand, another archival audio clip featuring Hitchcock and Truffaut, another introduction from Noel Simsolo, and a cracking stills gallery. New features for the disc include an interview with Charles Barr regarding Champagne and Hitchcock's early work, and finally, an audio commentary carried out by film historian Farron Smith Neame. I do find it really impressive and commendable that this many features are on each disc, particularly given the age of these films, where new interviews with original contributors is just not possible. Let's continue through to our fourth film. Based on the late 19th century book by Hall Caine, The Manxman tells a story set on the Isle of Man, a love triangle being the key feature, and we all know that Hitch is partial to one of those. We see two best friends, Phil and Peter, and the love interest, Kate. Phil is with Kate at the beginning and asks her to wait for him as he sails off to Africa to seek out great fortune, asking if his best friend can look after her while she's away. This quickly turns into a great affection, and much of the drama stems from there. Like a lot of these earlier Hitchcock pictures, whilst the premise may sound simple, it's told extraordinarily well by the director. The last third of the film in particular is a masterclass in escalating tension and truly building up the suspense as to which way the story will turn, something Alfred would become most well known for in the decades to come. Out of all the silence so far, I think this is the one I enjoyed the most. Special features include an introduction from Noel Simsolo, another audio snippet featuring Hitchcock and Truffaut, commentary from Farron Smith Neame, and a luscious stills gallery. New features include an interview with Stephen Horn, the man behind the new music score, plus we get a 25-minute featurette fronted by Davina Quinn-Liven on Hitchcock's leading ladies, particularly those seen in the films included within the box set. I will say though, if you're watching these features as you're working your way through the set, this mini-doc will talk about some of the later films, so if you haven't seen them before, maybe save it until the end. Now, our next picture is an absolute milestone for British cinema. Blackmail is a truly important film. Not only does it mark Alfred Hitchcock's entrance into the world of sound, but it was also the first sound film to be made in the UK. It's a short piece, clocking in at under 90 minutes, telling a story of how after killing a man in a bid to protect herself, a young woman is subject to severe blackmail from a shady character, leaving her partner, a young man at Scotland Yard, to choose between his heart and his professional ethics. It runs at a snappy pace, but interestingly, there exists both a silent and sound version of blackmail. The silent one was devised first, with Hitchcock shooting it in such a way that the shot material could be reutilised should it be converted for sound. Now, truthfully, having watched both versions, I can't decide which one I like better. The silent version, clocking even shorter at just 75 minutes, tells the story beautifully, with certain segments not needing dialogue at all, leaving us to get the picture from just the characters and the camera shots. The sound version does have its benefits. I believe we get greater clarity on who the blackmailer is and why he's doing this. However, there is a musical number which hardly seems fitting to the piece, but it does have its defenders nonetheless. Overall though, Blackmail, I would say, is the definitive Hitchcock film of this 1920s period. A thriller in many senses, one that Hitch would develop and perfect in the coming decades. Special features are aplenty on the Blackmail disc. We have the usual introductions from Noel Sim Solo, more audio interviews featuring Hitchcock, an audio commentary from film historian Tim Lucas, and a high-quality stills gallery. We also have Neil Brand talking about Blackmail, and a fascinating screen test for lead star Annie Ondra, featuring Hitchcock himself. Out of all the films in the set, Blackmail is arguably the most important historically. Is it my favourite within the set as a whole? Well, keep watching. You'll find out. Based on the play by Sean O'Casey, Juno and the Peacock was the first film that Hitchcock made exclusively in sound. Set during the Irish Civil War in the 1920s, a regular Irish family earns a lot of money in inheritance. Now living a much more extravagant life, the most traditional and important values that kept them going through the tough times begin to slip away, which can lead to some disastrous consequences. From early on, you can definitely tell that this was a play adapted for the screen. The vast majority of the film takes place in one location, the family flat, and Hitchcock himself admitted that he didn't deviate too far from the original source material, as that in itself would be potentially doing a disservice to Sean O'Casey's work. It's a very down-to-earth piece, and it's all the better for it. If anything, good as the film is, it just makes me want to see a stage production of the story. There was even one recently in the West End starring Mark Rylance. It's a slow burner, but it's a fascinating one at that. Juno and the Peacock arguably has the least special features on the disc. We have another audio extract from Hitchcock and Truffaut, a stills gallery, and an interview with film historian Charles Barr, reflecting on the controversy that this film had when it debuted within parts of Ireland. And that's your lot. If you're into character-driven plays at the theatre, then give Juno and the Peacock a try. See if you can get absorbed into the screen-telling as you would on the stage. Murder is a rather strange yet interesting way to tell a classic whodunit story. When an actress from a touring company is found murdered, another actress within the company is accused of being a killer. However, esteemed actor Sir John Menier is convinced of the young lady's innocence when serving on the jury and embarks on a journey to discover the truth behind the gruesome murder. I won't spoil how he goes about doing that, as I genuinely feel it's best experienced fresh with your own eyes if you haven't seen it before. It's well acted, that's for sure, extremely well shot, and even features takes on elements such as sexuality, which considering this was made in 1930, that would have been a huge deal for the time. It's not the best of the set in my view, but another fascinating look at how Hitchcock would tackle different genres and subject matters, though he has claimed in interviews he was never particularly a great fan of whodunits. Special features for Murder include a whole other feature film. Mary is the German language version, which was shot simultaneously, featuring German actors, and is included in full here on the disc. This was a semi-common practice for the early 30s, that films be shot in different languages with different actors, so it's great that we get to see this variation here. The usual suspects, namely more audio from Hitchcock Truffaut, an introduction from Noel, and a stills gallery are all still present. New additions include an audio commentary from film critic Nick Pinkerton, and an alternate ending, which having watched I'm glad they didn't use, but that's just my take. Whilst not amongst his top brass, even in this early era, Murder remains an interesting little picture that showcases how experimental Hitchcock was willing to be when tasked with more restricted story types, such as a whodunit. Released in 1931, the Skin Game, even all the way back then, would have been seen as a remake, as an earlier silent version of the story came out 10 years prior in 1921. Being another stage play adaptation, with Hitchcock at the director's chair, and a script adapted by his wife, Alma Reville, this version is tightly paced, well directed, and extremely well acted by its cast. The premise centres between two families. One are a gentrified bunch who have been around the place forever, the other spearheaded by a businessman, aiming to buy up as much land as he can, seemingly not giving two hoots about the locals he'd turf out or the history he'd wreck in the process. The skin game term itself refers to how far each side is willing to go in this tug of war, ultimately culminating with a dark past being revealed within one of the families. For those who haven't seen it yet, I won't say any more here, except that the last chunk of the film is certainly up there with being one of the classic Hitchcock scenes. Special features on the disc include more archive audio from Hitchcock Truffaut, an intro from Sim Solo, and a stills gallery. The unique bonus here is a conversation piece between Joe Botting and Natalie Morris on Hitchcock's wife, Alma. How she had a profound influence on his work right from the earliest pictures he directed in the 20s. The skin game for the most part holds up really well for its age. The scenes of conflict between members of the two families in particular is an easy highlight. One not to be missed from the set, or just your general Hitchcock viewing. Rich and Strange is arguably one of the most personal films that Alfred Hitchcock ever tackled. The story centres around a young couple who decide to go on a cruise around the world to spice up their lives. What follows are a whole series of shenanigans and mishaps which lead them to growing distant from one another. Alfred and his wife Alma also had a fondness for world travel, so, in retrospect, many have gone on to state their claim that the film is really derived from the Hitchcock's experiences. Whether it is or not, Rich and Strange has a lot of heart and ultimately is great fun. It possessed glimpses of what we've gone to see in Hitch's later work in the 30s, particularly the 39 Steps, and whilst dated in some areas, it made me smile time and time again throughout the short runtime. Special features on the Rich and Strange disc are yet again a mix of the expected and the surprise. Audio extracts from Hitchcock Truffaut, Sim Solo's introduction, and a stills gallery are all expected and welcome. The new features are namely an audio commentary from film historian Troy Howarth and a Charles Barr interview, in which he talks more in depth about the film, its themes, and potential inspirations. It's a film that you don't often hear talked about within the Hitchcock canon, like a lot of these features to be honest, but Rich and Strange has a rather endearing quality to it, one I can see myself returning to in the years to come. Our final feature film of the package is number 17. Released in 1932, Hitchcock's final flick with British International Pictures, this was based on a stage play by Joseph Jefferson Farjeon. Its central premise revolves around a detective, attempting to find a group of criminals who are trying to escape to the continent via rail, with a precious treasure along with them. This is the shortest film of the bunch, clocking in at just 1 hour and 4 minutes long, and it definitely feels it. Hitchcock tried to adapt the story in a more satirical manner from the stage play. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There is, however, lots of lovely model work on show during the film's climax, a dramatic vehicle chase all the way to the English Channel. It's definitely one of the weaker films of the set in my view, but number 17 has its fans nonetheless. The usual suspects are present special features-wise. Audio from Hitchcock Truffaut, introductions from Sim Solo, you get the gist by now. Oddly, instead of a normal stills gallery, we're treated to the lobby cards for the film. Perhaps not many high-quality stills exist for this one. Still, odd that it's the one film in the set that's presented in this manner. Unique features on the disc include an audio commentary from film historian and critic Peter Tonguette, as well as a lovely little piece on actor Jon Stewart, who plays the lead detective in number 17, fronted by one of his descendants. Whilst being seen as representing a low point in Hitchcock's days with BIP, number 17 still has plenty of little merits to enjoy, but as far as trains go, you're better off sticking with The Lady Vanishes or Strangers on a Train to name a few locomotive features in Hitchcock's film work. Now, those are the 10 films included in the set, but you'll notice that this is very clearly an 11-disc set. So, what's on disc number 11? Well, we have a brand new original documentary, Becoming Hitchcock, The Legacy of Blackmail. This 70-minute piece takes a detailed look at Hitchcock's early career in film, with particular focus on blackmail, given its historical significance. But it won't just be clips of the films in this set you'll see in the doc, for there are clips from many of Hitchcock's later films scattered throughout too, providing nice links for the viewer on how some elements run consistently through Hitch's career. I absolutely love when sets of this nature come with a nice brand new long documentary to whet the appetite, and if you're a Hitchcock fan, particularly of the earlier works, then it's a feature not to be skipped over. So, that's all of the content contained on the set. But how does it look? As mentioned, when dealing with films this old, a certain level of restoration or remastering often has to be undertaken to get these pictures looking fantastic once again. The films in the beginning set are no exception. Let's start with the silence. 4 of the 5 silents contained here were restored by the BFI back in 2012, as part of the Save the Hitchcock 9 campaign. Despite these restorations now being more than a decade old, these silent movies look phenomenal on any high-definition television. They've been cleaned up, with any major scratches or tears being removed, and they look brilliant as a result. For Blackmail, being treated as the crown jewel of the set, it receives a brand new 4K restoration for both the silent and talkie versions. Now, the immediate comment here would be, you won't get the full benefit of these 4K restorations as they are presented on a Blu-ray disc. However, with these restorations being completed this year in 2024, they're stunning to the eye. The silent version was restored by the BFI, and the talkie version by Silver Salt Restoration. Hundreds of hours were poured into getting these films looking as best as they can be, and the results are easy to see. Juno and the Peacock also gets a 4K restoration, courtesy of Silver Salt. This is particularly exciting for Hitchcock fans, as I believe this is the first major restoration of this film, almost 100 years since it was first released. Considering for years here in the UK, all we had of this movie was a standalone DVD release. To see it included within this box set, and looking the best it has ever looked, is one of the highlights of the package. Murder is an interesting outlier, as the only description given in the booklet is that it's unrestored. Now, before watching, I assumed this would mean the print would be in pretty poor shape. I was pleasantly surprised by what I was greeted with, looking as good as some of the other films in places. I'm assuming the unrestored moniker means that it's using the best available copies, which themselves may have had some remastering or care over the years, but I'm still not completely sure. Essentially, the film still looks good, so don't panic, but some further details about the condition of the elements used would have been useful. The Skin Game is the first stated example of a remastering on this set, not a restoration. To be clear on the difference, a restoration is returning a product to its original state, whereas a remastering is improving the quality of what currently exists, as opposed to trying to alter it to how it used to be. You can see some of the differences here, but the Skin Game's remaster occurred this year in 2024, undertaken by Studio Canal themselves. The results may not look as clean as the silent restorations, but compared to what I've read from people who previously owned DVD copies, this is still a marked improvement. Rich and Strange alongside Number 17 received 4K restorations back in 2021, courtesy of Silver Salt, so despite not being as fresh as Blackmail or Juno and the Peacock on that front, they still look excellent. So to summarise, of the 11 films presented, including both versions of Blackmail, 4 of them are 2012 BFI restorations, 3 have new 4K restorations from either the BFI or Silver Salt, a further 2 have 4K restorations from 2021 thanks to Silver Salt, 1 has been remastered for the box set, and Murder stands alone, as the only unrestored film in the collection. So all in all then, that is the full contents, my full thoughts, and a bit of the technical information about Hitchcock The Beginning, this lovely box set. Now, in terms of previous things that have come out like this, you may remember there was a DVD box set called Hitchcock The Early Years or Early Works Collection, something like that. That was a DVD set that came out around 2015, 2016. It contained all of the films in this set, apart from Juno and the Peacock. I guess rights-wise, it was owned by a different studio at the time. Juno could only be bought on a standalone DVD. Now, that previous DVD box set did have some special features as well, like the introductions from Sim Solo, but it was also missing a few bits and pieces. It didn't have the silent version of Blackmail, it only contained a scene as a special feature, for example, and obviously the versions you would have seen on that set didn't look nearly as good as the versions you find on this set. Plus, that earlier set was DVD only, so you're limited to standard definition, whereas this presents these films in high definition in the UK for the very first time. So for me, at least, having owned that set, this was a very easy upgrade to make. Now, again, full transparency, I received a review copy from Studio Canal. I'm very grateful to them for that. But even if I didn't, I probably would have gone out and bought this set anyway, as a big Hitchcock fan and as a very worthy upgrade. So if you have that earlier set and you're thinking about upgrading, it's definitely worth it. You're definitely getting more on this set compared to that earlier one. For those of you who might be grabbing this for the first time, let's talk some more details. Firstly, the price. Now, the price for this in most retailers is retailing at £119.99, or if you want to make it easier, round it up to £120. Now, is that a lot of money? Yes, of course it's a lot of money. More than £100 on a Blu-ray box set. It's a big investment for sure. The way I'd have looked at it genuinely, like if I didn't receive this review copy, the way I'd look at it would be how many, what's on it, how many films are on it, how much would it work out per film. So talking strictly the films, and I'm not even going to count the 2 versions of Blackmail. Let's count Blackmail as 1. This does say 10 early works after all. So you're getting 10 films, not even including the new documentary, just the films. So at 10 films divided by 120, it would work out to about £12 per film. Now, the cost of a brand new Blu-ray here in the UK, from my experience, a new Blu-ray costs no less than £15 minimum, or like around there. I'm trying to think actually, maybe like 13, 14, 15. So £12 per film here. I'd argue that's completely fair in terms of just what new Blu-ray prices are at the minute. Now, is every film on here worth that? You could argue maybe no. I mean, like, out of the ones I watched, you know, I didn't really enjoy Champagne that much. Number 17 had its merits, but it wasn't really my thing. So I guess if you haven't seen these before, I totally get it. It's a bit more of a blind buy. It's a bit more of an initial investment. However, as someone who did that as well, yes, I did own that earlier set, but I actually never got around to watching the films on that set properly. So as someone who sort of, you know, was going into this new, there are plenty of films here that are worth it. You know, both versions of Blackmail, The Skin Game, Rich and Strange, The Manxman, you know, Juno and the Peacock. A lot of these films are classics and great Hitchcock films as well at that. Obviously, that's a decision you have to make for yourself. £120 is a lot of money. A lot of people might not be able to do that right off the bat. And, you know, I'm sure down the line at some point, various retailers might include this in a sale, or it might be bundled within like a discount or something like that. But we never know when those come. Those could happen in 6 months. It could happen in a year. It could happen in 2 years. Who knows? So, yes, the price is definitely high. But now, having genuinely gone through this box set, experienced each film, I'd say the vast majority of it is absolutely worth the price of admission. In terms of where you can get it, I'd usually get my things from HMV. They're like one of the leading bastions of physical media at the minute, but I'm sure it's available other places. Zavvi, for example, might be available on Rarewaves, but if you give this a search online, you should be able to find it at various online shopping outlets pretty easily. I believe this might be a limited set. There's no indication of how many copies are or have been made. So if you are a Hitchcock fan, like especially if you've seen these before and you want to upgrade to HD and all that sort of stuff, then this is definitely a must buy. If you're getting into Hitchcock, if you're more familiar with the more famous stuff, the more well-known stuff from, say, the 50s and the 60s, then maybe, hopefully, this review has helped you or inspired you maybe either to get this set or maybe to pass on it, depending on your taste. You know, I know a lot of people don't like silent film, to put it bluntly, but then a lot of people do. There are some viewers out there who don't like watching anything in black and white, and considering all of the films here are black and white, that might be a struggle for them. But honestly, just as a Hitchcock fan, I could not recommend this set enough. To have this many of the master's early works from the 1920s and 30s on one coherent, cohesive, well packaged, well laid out, well presented box set with some great new restorations, boatloads of special features, a brand new documentary. Again, easily for me, well worth the price of admission. But yeah, that is it for this review and unboxing. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like. Let me know what you think. Are you going to be picking up this set yourself? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. One final thank you to Studio Canal for again sending me a copy of this early. It is available to buy now from all good physical media retailers, should you wish to. In the meantime, I've been Adam Martyn from AMTV. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Derek Chambers, Shaun Knock, Daud Khan, Liam De-Maine, AJ Mac 200017, Deck, Jen, Evanhart41, Traffy, Tim Ripley, Mr. Eurovision 1986, Marnanol Thurman, John Wakefield, Kieran Bolton, 40-something Manchild, Jerry Ralph, John McLeod, Subs Khan, Saint Rocket 9, James Wallace, and Ben are AMTV staff members.